Greetings, family. This is Dr. Kia. It is March the 16th, and I believe the day is Wednesday. The year is 2020, and it's going on noon. Today is March 16th, which is the day after the Ides of March. So I meant to do a video on yesterday, but I got very busy with family. The Ides of March is a very important day in history. Let me look and give you a little information about the Ides of March. It comes from a Roman concept. So let's listen. I'm going to read this. The Ides of March is the 74th day in the Roman calendar, corresponding to the 15th day of March. It was marked by several religious observances and was notable for the Romans as a deadline for settling debts. Now, that's important. It was notable for being the deadline for settling debts. Now, many people say that the United States Incorporated, or what has been masquerading as the government here in the United States, is actually an extension of the Roman Empire. So if that is true, yesterday was a very significant date in history, even for today. So what we need to find out is what happened in the financial markets on yesterday. Were any debts settled? Did somebody make any very important announcements? Now, I was very busy yesterday, but I would like for you to please, in the comments section, let me know if you found anything that happened on yesterday. We do know that the dollar was supposed to officially crash around this time between the 11th and the 15th, or the Ides of March. In 44 BC, the Ides of March, or March 15, became notorious as the date of the assassination of Julius Caesar. Isn't that interesting? So let's see what else occurred on the Ides of March. Now, please know that the so-called elite, or the people in power, are very, very particular about making sure that certain events are staged on the Ides of March, or around between March 11, 3/11, and 3/15. Be quiet. Now, before I get to what happened in history, I just don't want to forget that different things occurred even in 2020 around March the 13th through the Ides of March. Remember George Floyd? He was allegedly killed during that time. Antifa and Black Lives Matter were released around March 13th. March 13th was the last day of my job for those of us who were teaching in the public school system. March 13th, 2020. It's like everything shut down. It was the last day. Breonna Taylor allegedly got killed around that time. George Floyd, somewhere around that time. But that's when the whole world shut down, between the 13th and 15th of March. There are no coincidences. Everything follows a certain pattern. And if we're saying that we were an extension of the Roman Empire, which is not hard to believe considering that the Pope controlled the court system here, the three-letter institutions, the FBI, the CIA, the CPS, all those three little institutions, IRS, they all correlate to the Roman Empire and the Pope. So anytime the so-called elite want to do something significant, they would stage it during certain times. Now, let's see. The Romans did not number each day of the month from the first to the last day. Instead, they counted back from the fixed points of the month, the nones, the 5th or the 7th, 9 days inclusive before the Ides. The Ides is the 13th for most months, but the 15th in May, March, July, and October, and the calends, or the first of the following month. Originally, the Ides of March were supposed to be determined by the full moon. Now, you all know that the so-called elite, or these people in power, are really, really interested in astrology and astronomy. So, originally, the Ides was supposed to be determined by the full moon, reflecting the lunar origin of the Roman calendar. In the earliest calendar, the Ides of March would have been the first full moon of the year. Interesting. And some people also say this time is actually the first day of spring. So Julius Caesar was assassinated also during that day. That cannot be a mere coincidence. Now I'm looking at this other website that says, "Watch out for the Ides of March," because these people know that people elite got have things planned. Um, as depicted in Shakespeare, in the Shakespearean play, Julius Caesar was assassinated, and thus began the Roman Empire's fall. He was a Roman dictator, and his mentors and friends saw him as an ominous figure for the future. They believed he was growing too powerful. In his depiction of the tale, William Shakespeare writes, "Beware the Ides of March," as a warning to Julius Caesar. Later, he would be stabbed by his own friends and left with his last words, "Et tu, Brute." In other words, "You too, Brutus. You deceived me." I used to study theater just a little bit, so I had to learn certain Shakespearean plays. And he said, "Et tu, Brute." Famous last words of Julius Caesar. So why should you be aware of the Ides of March? As learned from Julius Caesar, the Ides of March carries a dark omen where anything horrible allegedly could happen at any moment. That's what they believe now. These people will make you fear the 13th and anything between the 13th and 15th, but particularly the 13th day. But in ancient Egyptian times, and in ancient time, 13 was actually a day that was about resurrection and power. It was about the death of old and a resurrection of something new, which is why the first day of spring occurs around this time. So 13 represents power, resurrection, newness, life, prosperity. But when the nefarious beings got in control, they wanted to trick you and me into making us be afraid of the 13th. When in actuality, the 13th is something to be excited about and to rejoice about. So that leads me to the question, what happened during the Ides of March between the 13th and the 15th for us here? Because March 11th is actually a portal, 311. The 11 is a portal. It's a doorway. It's walking from the old into the new. And then you have the 12, which 1 plus 2 equals 3. So 3 is significant in terms of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the child, or the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, the man, the woman, and child. Then you have the 14th and then the 15th being the Ides of March. The day falls back to the ancient Rome and the events that occurred during the Ides of March. Those who are superstitious are advised to be very careful, but we're not superstitious. We know the power of numbers. They are told to look out for people around them during this time, yada, yada, yada. Make sure you're safe because you're going to have curses. They always try to make us have fear so that we can emit louche, which is the energy, fearful, negative, scary energy that comes from our being. And it is what these nefarious beings feed off, whether you call them extraterrestrial, Satan, in those bloodlines that come from those negative extraterrestrials feed on your fear, so they have to incite fear. So here are 10 historical events that occurred in history during the Ides of March. Number 1, there was a raid on South England in 1360. Raping, pillaging, and murdering raged through the south of England. It was planned by the French. You notice the word planned. It was planned by the French, who ran the wild for 48 hours. It is said that the King of England at the time was raiding the French and they wanted to get back at the English. Number 2, there was a horrific cyclone in the Samoan, and it was called the Ides of March Samoan Cyclone in 1889. It destroyed 6 warships and it killed around 200 men. However, this historical event was most likely created the ability to avoid war, as each warship was a show of the particular country's strength and power. Number 3, what else happened on the Ides of March? Tsar Nicholas II abdicated, On the Ides of March in 1917, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, the big bad boogeyman, the one they tell us to be afraid of, he turned in his abdication papers and ended a family reign of over 300 years. His family was killed due to Bolshevik rule after his abdication. The Ides may have been a warning to Tsar Nicholas II that something horrible would come in the future. Number 4, it was a German occupation. In the Ides of March 1939, Nazi occupied Czechoslovakia and effectively drove it off the map. Wow. This was the year World War II began, and the atrocities continue over the course of 6 years. Number 6, let me move this around so I can see clearly. That's C6. Number 5, a blizzard on the Great Plains from just a little bit of snowfall in the evening. 60 people did not see their foreboding death in 1941. Because the coating of snow was so slight, people did not stop going out, and suddenly the wind changed and a blizzard was in the mist. In 6, there was a record rainfall on a small island of La Reunion. 73.62 inches of rain fell. Number 7, the NBC canceled a show. The Ed Sullivan Show was a much beloved show which aired for 23 years on the NBC channel. On March 15, 1971, it aired for the last time. And 8, ozone layer. In 1988, NASA announced an ozone layer had appeared. Number 9, there was a SARS disease release. Number 10, the coronavirus was spread by the Ides of March in 2020. The coronavirus pandemic has spread in all 50 states. No coincidence. So these are things that you need to be concerned about. Why would they stage this? Now, during the same time, Trump made an announcement. And what he said, he promised that there would be a day of reckoning. On the next video, I want to talk about this speech that Trump gave where he said there will be a day of reckoning and I'm going to return. But I see my daughter is coming in from out of town. I want to let you all go. I love you. Stay encouraged. Just know that this is the new season. This is spring. It's a time of rejoicing. It's a time of resurrection where old things have passed away and behold, all things have become new. So clean out your house, clean out your spirit, clean out your soul, clean out your body, clean out your life, and be concerned and rejoice and be excited about the resurrection of a new system and a new season. I love you. Look for something fantastic to occur in the financial markets. Look for us to be ushered into the gold standard. You all know around the same time, Russia made an announcement that they will return to the gold standard. You know that the Ukrainian situation is coming to an end. You just know things are wrapping up for our good. I love you. I have to go. Mwah.